Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.
Hello and welcome to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. Folks, if you like what you listen to over the course of the next 20 minutes, don't be afraid to rate and review if you listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Every single rating means a big deal to us here at the Real Health Podcast, so don't be afraid to leave one for us. Now, it's going to be a fantastic episode today. What would you do if you were told your life expectancy? Would it scare you, or would it motivate you to make changes to improve it? Here on Real Health, we're all about bringing you the information you need to make changes to improve your health and well-being. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about with my guest this week. I'm delighted to be joined by Dr Phil Kieran, Cork-based GP, who is the presenter of RG's How Long Will You Live? The show follows 6 people aiming to improve their overall health and life expectancy by making some small but impactful changes. Phil, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Not too bad now, and thanks for having me on.
So listen, let's get cracking straight away. For those who haven't seen the show, it's still on the player. I know that there's 2 episodes still to come. Tell me more about the show. It's built around your life expectancy and improving it, isn't it?
It is. So I guess the basic premise of the show is sitting down with people, doing some medical testing to find out where they are at this stage, and then projecting that forwards to see how it's going to have an impact on their later years. And I guess then when we have that baseline information, it's about trying to find out what in their lifestyle has the biggest impact on those numbers and trying to improve it.
And are there certain times in people's lives, you know, those kind of milestone birthdays where they begin to reflect a little bit and think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have drank so much, or maybe I shouldn't have eaten so much, or whatever. Are there certain milestones that kind of trigger these thoughts in people about their longevity and about how long will they live, essentially?
Well, I guess there definitely are. And the big ones I would see in GP would be sort of the roundy birthdays, the decades, particularly 40, 50, 60, people tend to take stock again. But the first one for a lot of people is when they have kids for the first time, because all of a sudden you're not just responsible for your own health and life. You're there trying to plan forwards for the future around them. So that tends to be when a lot of people stop feeling immortal. I think back in our 20s, I felt like I was absolutely immortal and nothing could get me. Now, coming closer to a different decade, it definitely makes you think a bit more. And sort of when you're growing up, when your kids are growing up, you start playing with them. And a lot of things you take for granted, you want to make sure that you can keep doing into their adulthood and things like that. And I think that's really the time that people take stock and have a look and see, well, what can I actively do to try and improve my quality of life going forwards?
And things do change as you age. I know myself, I hit 40, and all of a sudden, now whether it's psychosomatic or not, things, you know, it takes longer to recover from a long run. I go for a long run, it takes me 2 days to recover, where, you know, when I was in my 20s, I'd recover nearly overnight. And things do, you know, and everything's just a bit more creaky. You need to do more flexibility work, and obviously the gym work is more important in keeping your muscle mass on board. So, like, as those decades go on, it is very normal that there are physical changes, but also the reality is that no matter what decade you're going to hit, you can improve things and things can get better.
Absolutely. And look, I experienced the delayed recovery myself. I did the half marathon, which I was training for, and ended up with a stress injury that meant I had to take 2 months off running afterwards because of not being 20 anymore. But it's one of these things that your body will start to take longer to recover. And so you kind of have to be a bit more thoughtful about what you do in your life. You can't just go like you could in your teens and 20s, go, well, sure, look, I'll just keep running through the pain and my body will take it, because it might not. But the important thing that I tell a lot of my patients is it's important not to let that become an excuse for not doing stuff, because the day you stop doing something because of your age is the last day you'll be able to do it. If you give up on doing something, it's very hard to get that back. It's not impossible, and it's always the right time to improve your health and your lifestyle. But the important thing that I would say to people is prevention is a lot better than fixing it in these situations, and trying to maintain your health and quality of life and quality of movement particularly are really important to do from an early age.
I think you hit on it there. That quality of life and quality of movement, they're the really important things as we begin to get older. You know, keeping your muscle mass, having as much muscle mass as you can. It is, you know, the goal is wellness, but it's quality of life, it's quality of aging, it's quality of doing the things that you want to do and not being prevented from doing them by being active enough to be able to do it, isn't it?
And that's it exactly. Like, so with this show that I'm doing, we talk a lot about like, well, we've extended your life expectancy from 77 to 84, let's say. And a lot of people I think go like, do I want another 10 years in my 80s?
Mm.
But the point is, it's not about extending the end. It's about improving the time from here to there, because the frailty you have at the very end of your life is going to be there for the last number of years of your lifespan. So if you're going to live longer, you'll become frail later, you'll have more independence for longer, and you will be able to enjoy that time for longer. So that's the key thing, really.
And talk to me about what you know the people that you see on the show, and as a GP, you know what you're seeing, I suppose, in the real world. What holds people back from making those changes and taking control of their lives? Are they scared about, or is it lack of knowledge, or you know what stops them from making the changes?
I think one of the big things is time. I think a lot of people, particularly 30s, 40s, 50s, people are really busy. Like work life balance is not for most people in a great state at the moment. And then I think the second thing is intimidation. So they kind of think, well, I'd have to make such drastic changes to change my life that it becomes very off-putting. Like we see it a lot in January. A lot of people take up gym memberships, for instance, and then 3 months later, most of them aren't going. And if you ask them why, it's that like, well, it takes half an hour to get there, then to get changed, do my exercise, have a shower, get changed again, and get home. I need a 2 hour block to do it. And you're like going, well, 2 hours as a block is often really hard to find. So what I'm trying to encourage my patients to do, and then latterly the TV show is to try and find small changes that can build. So I kind of say to people, if you make a change in your lifestyle, if at some stage you don't turn around and say to yourself, well, this is easy, why didn't I do this earlier? You've probably taken on too much.
Yeah, it's that big. It's the atomic habits thing, really, isn't it? It's the big scary goals are so hard to achieve, yet every people do it. Normally in kind of January and September. It's that 1% rule, though, that's a much better determinant of longer term habits forming, which is that, a small bit better every day, or a small bit better every week, or small little adjustments to your lifestyle so that they don't feel hard. We know that they're
Exactly.
easier to stick to over the course of time. It's that big, scary January gym member, January resolution change that people find so
Yeah.
difficult to do.
I'll quit everything in January, and I'll take up a gym, and I'll get up at 5 in the morning, and I'll be a nicer person, and I'll take up art and ballet. It's like, if you're saying and too much, you're not going to get it done.
Yeah,
Life is hard.
and
You need to make it easy on yourself.
it's the latest fad diet and exercise plan, of which there's
Yeah.
several flying around
Yeah.
the country at the moment that we won't name them, but they're around.
No.
Um,
Listen, the word diet, I absolutely refuse to entertain, because by its definition, it's temporary. So what you
Yeah.
need to be doing is looking at what you want to change, and then make a tiny change in that direction and build on it.
Chat to me about the health screen that you do in the show. I know, listen, on my own show, we do it, and on a personal level, I do. It's one of the best parts of my job. You get to look at such a varied aspect of people's health. Tell us a bit more about the one that you guys do and what it involves.
So what we do is we do kind of a medical and a physical health check. So the medical side of things, on a tests wise, we would check sort of cholesterol, blood sugar, and then just a basic check of liver function, kidney function, thyroid function, that sort of thing. Then we'd also do a physical examination, usually including an ECG, to make sure that there's no signs of heart disease or anything like that. But then what I'm kind of very interested in is, from a functional side of things, is the fitness testing. So we do one of the tests that a lot of the participants are kind of surprised by is we do a grip strength test,
Oh
and they
yeah,
kind of look
yeah,
at
yeah.
you like it's funny. It's like, why are you checking my grip strength? And it's like, well, bizarrely, grip strength really lines up well with overall life expectancy. So it's one of these composite measures that I really like, because it gives you a really good starting point. And if that improves, then you can infer that there's been an improvement in health. Then after that, we do a lot of functional stuff. So we check like their VO2 max, how their overall fitness level is. And what I think that's really useful for is not determining how fit are you today, it's how hard can I encourage you to push tomorrow, you know? So it's not necessarily where you are right now that I'm interested in. It's what does that mean for what can we do for you? And then sort of a lot of basic stuff that has a big impact on life quality. So sit to stand testing and other movement tests.
Let's chat through some of these because they're really interesting, but B, for people listening in, they're great for them to be aware of. Like, so cholesterol is something that people hear about time and time and time and
Yeah,
time again. But it's nice to go back and revisit it and say, okay, what is
it
it?
is.
Why is it important? And
So,
what do people need to know?
and what people need to know. That's absolutely, because it's something I spend a lot of my day talking to patients about and educating them on. So cholesterol is a fat in your body, and it is important for maintaining cell health and making a lot of hormones. So we need some cholesterol, right? And most of it is made in your liver and pushed out into your bloodstream. And we get it from lots of sources as well, from food and from our diet. So generally speaking, you'll hear three numbers talked about. One is your total cholesterol, and that's exactly what it says on the tin. That's how much cholesterol is in a sample of blood. And you're aiming for that to be 5 or less. Okay? The next thing then is your good cholesterol. People talk about this a lot. This is your HDL, or your high density lipoprotein. And that, we would like that to be above 1. So if you're talking about it, if you get it tested, if that's above 1, you're doing well. And things you can do to improve that are exercise. Physical exercise is good for increasing your HDL. Then we've got LDL, or low density lipoprotein, which is your bad cholesterol. And we like that to be less than 2.7. So what you can do to help these things is exercise is a big one. Not drinking too much, because alcohol pushes up your LDL and another part of your cholesterol, and it increases your total cholesterol. And then not eating a lot of fatty or processed foods has a big impact on it as well. Unfortunately, a lot of your cholesterol level is also genetically determined. So if your parents needed medication to bring their cholesterol down, there's a very good chance you're going to need it too.
Okay, I like it. Good. Folks, you're listening to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. We're chatting all things health checks and what you need to know. This is great. Bone density, a very important indicator, especially when it comes to aging. And for women kind of during and post menopause, it's important too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly, so one of the things I tell my female patients, and a lot of the times they're surprised about it, is your bone density, the amount of calcium you put into your bones, kind of maxes out in your early 20s, late teens. So it's important to make sure that you're eating enough calcium, getting enough vitamin D, particularly in Ireland, because we live in the North Pole here. And then one of the big things that a lot of people don't know about is that weight bearing exercise, so walking, cycling, running, that sort of thing, really important for keeping your bones strong and making them as strong as possible in your early life, so that then when you do get to menopause and the bones start to weaken a little bit, which they do, you're starting from a much stronger point.
And I'll be interested to see what you make on this, but it's something that we always recommend to people, and it's a it's a body weight exercise of sorts, and that's standing. That presumably by standing
Yeah.
more, we're naturally strengthening our bones and strengthening our muscles.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing I say to people is, like, if you work at an office desk job, try and find excuses to stand up. So don't put things off because you'd have to get up from your desk. Try and find reasons to get up from your desk. I was at a talk about exercise, and the effects of activity on the physiology a couple of years ago, and it struck me as funny because it was even a little bit out of date when the recommendation came up. But they were saying that in the evenings, if you're watching telly, get up and leave the room when the ads come on. And now most people don't watch TV with ads, but the same thing holds. You should try not to be sitting or stationary for more than about 40 minutes as a block. So try and find
Which
excuses to stand up.
99.9% of our listeners absolutely fail that test, as most people do, because
Yeah.
we sit,
Oh,
and
we
this is what
do.
you and I are recording now. Where I'm sitting, you're sitting,
Yeah.
but
Oh.
I've stood for a good chunk of the day, so we're doing okay so far. Next one is really
I have
interesting.
an intercom to call patients from the waiting room, but I make myself get up and walk because otherwise I'd be sitting all day.
Yeah, listen, every bit of movement helps, absolutely.
Mm.
Body fat percentage, love this. We've been chatting
Right.
body fat and shouting from the rooftops for years. It is really,
Mm.
really, really important. Tell us why.
So body fat percentage, particularly the body fat that you carry around your middle, is a predictor of is a negative predictor of health in a lot of reasons. It can cause fat infiltration of a lot of organs like your liver and stuff like that, and it's also, we know that it's associated with other things like heart disease and cancer. It is a measure, and I suppose one of the things is, I think it's a really important measure for people to know and to recognize. But I also think that some people can get very turned off when they see those numbers not particularly dropping if they have a healthier lifestyle. So I always encourage people to think about it from two sides of things. When you change your lifestyle, you're trying to lose weight and lose fat, but you're mainly trying to improve your health. So even if those numbers stay static, but you're moving more, you're getting healthier anyway.
And it's fair to, I suppose, in the same way, it's fair to say that, you know, weight and body fat maintenance is healthy. That as we get older, you know, I'm not sure what the up to date stat is, but the older one was a stone a decade is the rough average that of the weight we'll gain. It mightn't be that high now, but we still gain. We tend to gain as we get older. That if you're maintaining your weight and maintaining your body fat levels, well, that in its own right is much healthier than if they're increasing.
The win, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what I say to people is, even if your weight and body fat percentage stays static, but you improve your exercise and your exertion and your overall fitness, well, then you are getting most of the benefits there anyway.
Chat to me about the average life expectancy in Ireland. What is it?
So for men, it's 82, and for women, 84, which is pretty good.
Okay. And again, I suppose, you know, the whole idea of the show and for people's wellness in general is that as opposed to being 82 and 84, we want to be as healthy as we can leading up to that 82 and 84 so that the quality of older life is improving.
Is improved. And that's it. Like, so people think about like their grandparents who were 80 when they maybe passed away, and they go like, well, do I want to live another 10 years past how they were? And that's not the point. The point is that you want to be like they were in their 50s when you get to 70. That's the key thing. You want to be able to get to that age with complete independence, with still being able to move around enough that you enjoy your pastimes, you know, do what you enjoy, hang around with people, talk to people, and still be able to do your own thing at that age.
It's tough giving people kind of numbers, you know, and telling someone their life expectancy. It must be quite scary for people to hear, but actually having all the information is crucial to making long-term change, and having the numbers to you know, to benchmark against and test against. It's a really important easy way to keep yourself on track in the long term.
And it is, and seeing the changes are really important for motivation. So what I say to a lot of people as well is, look, you will have bad days, and you might even have bad weeks where you feel like you've fallen off the wagon with it. But the important thing is not to beat yourself up about it, get restarted again. And because the show we're doing is 6 weeks, you can show them, look, this is the change that happened in a really brief period of time. Imagine if you keep this up for the next 20 years, you know? It's a huge improvement.
And as part of that, it's important to recognize that, you know, if you're making changes and you have a number to benchmark against, you're not aiming for perfection. You're aiming for, you know, life to get in the way every now and again. But it's allowing for that and realizing that that's very normal. And that's important. And again, like, people, when they try to get healthy or try to get well, they tend to disregard that, and they try to be perfect all the time. And the reality is that we're not going to be perfect all the time. That you have to allow for a bit of life to happen.
And you need to enjoy yourself as well. So like, if a really good opportunity to do something fun comes up and that's your day that you had planned on doing a workout, well, just try and reschedule it. You know, you want to be able to live your life in an enjoyable way. But the important thing is not to throw everything out of the pram because you had a bad couple of days. You know, don't beat yourself up. Get back to it.
One thing that was really interesting was teaching or showing people new activities. And that's important, isn't it? That things can be fun, but it's also, there's so much in Ireland that isn't, you know, Gaelic, walking, running, or whatever. There's, and nothing, by the way, there's nothing wrong with Gaelic, walking, or running, just to cover that, very important. But there's lots of other stuff out there you can try too, because, you know, that makes it fun and you have a bit of a laugh, and that's important.
It is, and like, I think a lot of us turn around and we say like, oh no, I've never done that before, and like, you might be only 30 or you might be 40 or 50, and you say, well, I've never done that before and I'm scared of trying it. And it's like, well, what I say to people is, think about what's the worst that could happen. Like, and if it's that you might not enjoy it, well, sure, you've tried it and you found that out. But finding new activities and not limiting yourself is a really good way of keeping activity interesting. You know, because if you walk the exact same route every day, 365 days a year, you might find it like meditation, or you might just find it really boring and make you stop doing it.
We moved to West Cork recently, and there's two things I've taken back up. Well, one in particular was stand-up paddleboarding, which I did it years ago, but we're kind of back into it now, which is brilliant. And the other thing is sauna and sea swimming. There's a guy who goes around West Cork with a barrel sauna on the back of his of a trailer, and he rocks up, and it's I find it really relaxing, and B, it's very healthy for you. But it's that sense of, it's just a bit of crack. We've great fun doing it, and it's a bit of a laugh, but it's really healthy at the same time. So, you know, it is important to experiment with new things for people.
And to not be put off by the fact that it is new. Sea swimming I love, actually, and generally speaking, if there's anywhere that there's a group of people doing it, they tend to be really good crack.
And slightly mad at the same time.
You're slightly mad, but a bit of mad is fun.
Absolutely. Okay, the other thing I wanted to chat about is, you can make a difference in a short space of time. Like, on the show, it's 6 weeks. We saw one lady, she had a life expectancy of 76, and then it was 85 after just 6 weeks of being healthy. But even in a short space, you can make a big impact by simple health-based intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the simple health-based intervention. I suppose the big one I tend to focus on, because it gets your most bang for your buck, tends to be exercise, because a lot of adults in Ireland are not active enough. I think I can safely say that. So it's kind of low-hanging fruit for where to improve. So for any of your listeners out there who are wondering what's the first thing they should look at, exercise is what I usually say. But a 6-week intervention can make a big difference, But across the board, talking to the 6 people that we met through this, what they said was that they were surprised, A, how big a difference it made, and B, how sustainable it was. So by making small changes that you can genuinely fit into your life, you're much more likely to succeed in maintaining them.
Phil, it's been great to catch up, and thank you so much for joining us today on today's show. Folks, that's all we have time for. Many thanks to Phil for joining us. How Long Will You Live is on RTE1 Tuesday at 8:30pm, and the previous episodes are available on the RTE player. I'm back next week with another Real Health show, and in the meantime, keep in touch. You know where we are, at Carl Henry PT on Instagram, and realhealth@independent.ie. We'll see you next week. Slán go fóill.
Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.